Hey there, I'm Douglas from Draftbit. In today's video, we're going to be exploring the circular progress component. This component visually represents a numeric progress value in a circular format. This is great for showing completion rates or loading status in a more dynamic way. I'm going to guide you through what this component is, why you might want to use it, and then we'll get started adding it to the screen. So how do we add this component to Draftbit? So you're going to come to the screen and you're going to locate the component picker. Click add, then you're going to search for the circular progress. Once we have the circular progress component on the screen, I'm going to zoom in to 125% for better visibility. So I come here, then I go to 125% and we can now see it better. Now let's head over to the data tab. So make sure you click on the circular progress. Then on the right side, we're going to go to the data tab. So the first thing and the most important thing that we need to talk about is the value. I'm going to set this value to 70. And this indicates a static progress level of 70%. This value determines how much of the circular bar is filled and you can adjust it dynamically. Then up next we have minimum value. This sets the lowest value the progress bar can display. Typically it's set to 0. So let's set that to 0 quickly. And then we have maximum value. This defines the highest value possible, often set up to 100%, and it represents full progress. So let's just set that to 100. And yeah, we now have a range from 0 to 100. So we can no longer go above 100 and we can no longer go below 0. So these above settings, they give you control over the range of the progress displayed. To manage the value more effectively, it's best to use a variable. So let's go ahead to variable, click add. Then we're going to call this progress. It's going to be of type number and initially it's going to be 0. Then we save that. We come back to our value and instead of the static value, we're going to add the progress. Then next up, what I want to do, I want to add a button here. So we come here to home, click add, then I want to add a button. And what I want this button to do, when we click this button, I want this button to increment the progress. So let's go back to the button, and on the button, there's this interaction tab. We click on press. So on press is what you want to do when this button is pressed, and simply I just want to set the variable. And what this allows me to do is go ahead and target the progress. And then what I'm going to do is say whatever the progress value is, right? I'm going to add that value by, let's just say 70, right? So let's say add, and I'm going to add, and then the number, just say 70. So anytime I now click this button, it's going to increment this progress. So let's go ahead to our device preview and go to web preview. And then when I click get started, notice how our progress goes from here, then it goes to 70. Now let's move over to the config tab and discuss some key properties. So let's go back to the circular progress, and then we go here to the config tab. And the first thing that we have is the component name. So this is how the component appears in the screen's component tree. Customize it can help with organization. So this is how the progress bar appears here. So this is the component tree, and here you're able to affect that. Then we have starting position. So basically this just specifies where do you want the progress bar to start from. So by default, you notice how it starts from the top and then it goes down here to the left side. So we can change that. We can say I want you to start from the left, and then it's going to start from somewhere here. So right now it's 0. When I click get started, notice where it starts from. Starts from the left. Now I think you get the point. You can say start from the right. Then yeah, you get the point. Let's put it back on top. Then up next we have indeterminate. So when enabled, this will show an infinite looping animation instead of a fixed value, which is useful when the current progress cannot be determined. And what this does first is it ignores whatever value you have, and it's going to have an infinite looping animation. So this is perfect for when you're not aware of the progress value. You can just use this. Okay, let's turn that off. Then we have animation duration and animated. So let's talk about animation first. So this option determines whether a transition to a new value should be animated or not. So if we're going from 0 to 70, should this have an animation? Should this move smoothly with certain transitions, or do you not want that to be animated? So this is where we select that. By default, when we click get started, it's animated, it's moving smoothly. When we turn this off, then we try again. Notice how it just flickers on the screen. That's because the animation has been turned off. Let's have that back on. Then up next, we have animation duration. This property controls how long the transition will take when a progress value changes. Right? So right now, it's going pretty quickly. So it's just like 0 to 70 pretty quickly. We can slow this down to 5,000 milliseconds, and that should take a bit of time, and we can see what's happening. And now you can see it go through the progress track. Let's have everything back to normal before we proceed. Finally, let's dive into the styles for the circular progress component. So up here, we go to styles. And the first style that we see is the color. So this just sets the color of the progress bar. So yeah, before we proceed, let's talk about this, right? So when we click get started, this is what we call the progress bar, right? But then what it's sitting on, this gray part, is called the track. So if you just understand that, it will help you more as we talk about this, right? So the color, basically, we're just talking about the progress bar. What color do you want that to be? We can change it. We can say red, right? And now we have a red progress bar. And then what I'm going to do now, so we don't have to keep clicking the button, I'm just going to go to the variable that we set, and I'm just going to have the default be 70. Just so we don't have to keep clicking that button. Now it's just defaults to 70. Right? And then let's set back the normal color. Up next, we have dash gap. This defines the gap between the progress bar. So if you select this, if you have this enabled, basically you're just going to have these dashes in between the progress bar. Right. So how do we start to use that? We have to set a dash width. So if we set a dash width of 20, for example, it's going to set a default dash gap, and then we're going to have dashes in our progress bar. Notice how we now have dashes. Then we have dash offset. So just saying, where do you want this dashed progress bar to begin and end? So notice where it's starting, right? If we just come in here and then we say we want a dashed offset of 20, it's going to shift. Right, and now it's starting from another point. So basically, this is what that controls. Let's reset. Then up next, we have line cap. This determines the shape of the progress bar, start and end. So notice how the start is curved, the end is curved. So that's what we call round. But we also have what we call square. Once we do that, this is now going to be squared. So that's what that controls. Let's reset that. Then up next, we have show track. So this property allows you to toggle the visibility of the progress track. So this is the track. This gray part, we can disable this, right? And once that's disabled, we no longer have a track. Let's have that back to normal. Then up next, we have thickness. So this is basically the thickness of the progress bar. So we can just say we want the progress bar to be 40, and notice how it becomes thick, right? And then down here, sorry to skip this part, but I just wanted to make sense. Down here, we have track thickness. So track thickness is going to be the thickness of the track. So if I come on the track and I say 60, that means the track is now going to encapsulate the progress bar. Notice how it's now inside, right? Let's reset that. And up next, we have track color. So this is the color of the track. So this is the track again, and this is that color, right? Then we have track dash gap, track dash offset, and track dash width. So it's just the same as above, where we have dash gap, but for the above, we're talking about the progress bar. And then now when we're talking about the track, it's this part, right? So it's the same thing, but for different parts. So the track dash width, if we put a 20, right? That sets a default dash gap. And then we have a dashed track. If you notice, yeah, the track is now dashed. Let's have that off. And then again, we have the track line cap. So the track right now, by default is curved, right? We're not able to see that properly inside of the circular progress. But basically, if we want it to be square, it can be square. If we want it to be round, it can be round. And then we've already talked about the track thickness. So yeah, that brings us towards the end of the circular progress component. And yeah, if you have any questions, please leave them down below. Please like the video, please share, and see you in the next video.